Where'd that rifle come from? The museum? The voice, dripping with the lazy arrogance of unearned authority, cut through the dry heat of the Fort Bragg firing range. The crowd of young rangers, eager to impress the sharp-tongued Captain Davis, chuckled nervously. Seriously, Master Sergeant, this is the All-Army Marksmanship Championship, not a historical reenactment. We use modern equipment here. The woman he addressed said nothing. She stood with a stillness that seemed to absorb the sound around her, her focus entirely on the worn M24 sniper rifle resting on its bipod. She wasn't old, perhaps mid-30s, but her face was a placid mask of professional indifference, her uniform immaculate but unremarkable, bearing the rank of a master sergeant and the insignia of a non-combat logistics unit. Her silence was a vacuum, and Captain Davis, a man who detested a vacuum, rushed to fill it with more words. Are you even qualified to be on this line? I'll need to see your range card and your unit authorization. From the observation tower high above, Colonel Matthews lowered his binoculars, not looking at the target, but at the woman. He saw the faded stock of the rifle, the worn smooth wood of the pistol grip, the almost imperceptible way her body settled behind the weapon, not on it, but into it, as if they were a single organism. He had seen that stance only once before, a lifetime ago, in a dusty corner of a forgotten war. If you believe true respect is earned in silence, not demanded with noise, type competence below. Captain Davis continued his condescending inspection, circling the master sergeant like a predator sizing up prey. He gestured grandly to the other competitors, men armed with the latest composite stock, modular chassis rifles, gleaming with advanced optics and suppressors. See that? That's 21st century lethality. Precision. Progress. What you have there is a relic. A fine weapon for its time, I'm sure. My grandfather probably used one just like it. But its time has passed. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial stage whisper loud enough for everyone on the line to hear. Look, Master Sergeant, I don't know who you know in logistics to get a slot here, but this is the deep end of the pool. There's no shame in admitting you're out of your league. Why don't you pack up your antique and go supervise a warehouse somewhere? Leave the serious work to the professionals. Still, she offered no reaction. Her hands, steady and sure, moved with an economy born of infinite repetition. She produced a worn leather-bound notebook, her dope book, an orchestral wind meter, taking a reading with a calm that seemed to mock the captain's agitated presence. Her refusal to engage, to even acknowledge his insults, was more infuriating to him than any retort could have been. It was a silent, profound dismissal of his authority, his knowledge, his very existence on that line. The air grew thick with tension as the other shooters shifted uncomfortably, the captain's tirade having soured from amusing bravado into a display of naked cruelty. The range officer's voice crackled over the loudspeaker, announcing the final challenge of the day, a tiebreaker for the top score. Shooters, we have a new target. A 10-inch plate at 1,200 meters. The wind is a variable full value, gusting from your 9 o'clock. You have 90 seconds. Cold bore shot. Good luck. A collective groan went through the line. 1,200 meters was a stretch for the 762 millimeters rounds they were using, and the shifting, unpredictable winds had been defeating shooters all day. The last three competitors had missed the plate entirely, their high-tech rifles and advanced scopes rendered useless by the invisible hand of nature. Captain Davis smirked, crossing his arms. This would be the final, public humiliation. He watched as the master sergeant, whose turn it was, settled into her firing position. There was no wasted movement. She didn't rush. Her breathing slowed, becoming a deep, rhythmic cadence. She laid her cheek against the worn stock of the M24, a stock darkened by the oils of a hand that was not her own, a story etched into its grain. The narrator inside the tower could almost feel the history of the weapon, a silent legacy of discipline and violence. She made a minute adjustment to her scope's windage knob, a single, decisive click that sounded like a chambered secret in the tense air. Davis saw the movement and scoffed, believing it to be a guess, a fool's hope against an impossible wind. He prepared his next sarcastic remark, ready to deliver the final blow. The world for Master Sergeant Anya Sharma had shrunk to the circular image in her scope. The shimmering mirage boiled up from the baked earth, distorting the distant target. The wind whispered against her exposed skin, a language she understood better than words. Her mind was a silent computer, calculating drop, spin drift, windage, and the subtle Coriolis effect. She didn't fight the rifle's recoil, she became part of its cycle. Her finger rested on the trigger, a gentle, patient pressure. For a moment, everything stopped. The wind, the heat, the beating of her own heart. Then, a clean, crisp break. The rifle bucked against her shoulder, a familiar and comforting jolt. The report was a sharp crack that echoed once across the valley and was gone. And then, there was only silence. A profound, heavy, deafening silence that stretched for what felt like an eternity. 1 second, 2 seconds. The bullet, an unseen messenger of her will, was crossing the vast expanse. 3 seconds. The entire range held its breath. Captain Davis's smirk was frozen on his face, an artifact of his own ignorance. For seconds, and then it came. Not loud, but perfectly, cosmically clear, a single, resonant ping. The sound of 168 grains of copper-jacketed lead striking hardened steel at over a kilometer away. A perfect, dead-center hit. A collective gasp swept through the onlookers. Davis's jaw fell slack. His mind refused to process what his ears had just confirmed. No, he breathed, the word a tiny, pathetic puff of disbelief. That's not possible. Colonel Matthews moved. He descended from the tower with a deliberate, unhurried pace that commanded attention. The crowd of Rangers parted for him as he walked onto the firing line, his gaze fixed on the master sergeant. He ignored the dumbstruck Captain Davis, walking past him as if he were a piece of range equipment. Sharma was already working the bolt action of her rifle, her face betraying no emotion, no hint of triumph. She was preparing for her next task, the impossible shot already relegated to the past, a simple execution of her craft. The colonel stopped beside her, his shadow falling over her position. For a long moment, he said nothing. He simply looked down at the M22, his eyes, which had seen 3 decades of conflict, tracing the faint scratches on the barrel and a small, hand-carved symbol near the receiver, a stylized raven with a single star above it. A symbol he hadn't seen in 20 years. His expression shifted from professional curiosity to something deeper, a mixture of awe, memory, and profound respect. Master Sergeant, he said finally, his voice low and steady, yet it carried across the now silent range. That is an extraordinary piece of equipment. May I have the honor of inspecting your service weapon? He chose his words with surgical precision. He did not call it a rifle. He called it a service weapon. He did not command. He requested the honor. Sharma paused her movements, looked up at the colonel, and after a brief, assessing glance, gave a single, curt nod. She cleared the weapon with practiced grace and carefully handed it to him, stock first. Colonel Matthews accepted the rifle with a reverence typically reserved for a fallen soldier's flag. He held it in both hands, feeling its balance, its history. He turned, not to Sharma, but to face the assembled crowd of shooters, and, most pointedly, Captain Davis. Captain, the colonel's voice was like ice, cutting through the humid air. You asked a question. You asked where this rifle came from. He paused, letting the weight of his attention settle on the younger officer. It came from a place you've only read about in books. This is an M24 sniper weapon system, yes. But it is one of only 3 ever modified by the Asymmetric Warfare Group's Skunkworks program. It has a custom-weighted barrel, a hand-lapped bolt, and a trigger group tuned to a 2.5-pound break. This rifle, serial number 762-002, was issued to one man. Master Gunnery Sergeant Marcus, the Raven Thorn. A wave of shock rippled through the soldiers. Thorn was a legend, a ghost, a name spoken in hushed tones at sniper schools, his exploits the stuff of classified myth. Before he was killed in Ramadi, the colonel continued, his voice hardening. Thorn gave this rifle to his spotter, his handpicked protege. The only shooter he ever said was better than he was. He turned his gaze back to the quiet woman standing before him. A shooter who went on to serve with a special mission unit that doesn't officially exist. A shooter whose service record is a long list of redacted ink. Master Sergeant Anya Sharma. He took a step back, brought the rifle to a ceremonial port arms, and then snapped to the sharpest position of attention he had executed in years. He rendered a slow, deliberate salute to the Master Sergeant. An act of deference so profound it shattered the entire social and military hierarchy of the range. The colonel's salute was the thunderclap after the lightning of the shot. For a moment, the world seemed to freeze. A full-bird colonel saluting a master sergeant was a fundamental inversion of the military order, a gesture of respect so potent it left no room for ambiguity. The whispers started immediately, spreading like wildfire from the firing line to the bleachers and beyond. The story was already taking shape, morphing from an incredible event into an enduring legend. They weren't just talking about the shot anymore. They were talking about the rifle's lineage, the ghost of Marcus Thorne, and the quiet, unassuming woman who was his heir. They called her the Raven's Shadow, or simply 002. The rifle was no longer an antique. It was a holy relic. Captain Davis stood as if he'd been struck by lightning, his face a canvas of shame and dawning horror. The foundations of his worldview, built on superficial judgments of gear, rank, and bravado, had been demolished by a single bullet and a single salute. He saw the looks on the faces of the young Rangers he had tried so hard to impress. Their eyes were no longer on him, but on Sharma, their expressions a mixture of hero worship and regret for their earlier complicity. Sharma, for her part, accepted the colonel's salute with a simple, respectful nod. She then took her rifle back, her movements as calm and methodical as ever, and began to break it down for cleaning, her focus absolute. The chaos of her own myth-making was just another environmental factor to be noted, managed, and ignored. Later that evening, as the sun bled across the Carolina sky, Captain Davis found her. She was sitting alone on a bench behind the armory, the disassembled pieces of the M24 laid out on a clean oilcloth before her. She was meticulously cleaning each component, her hands moving with the gentle precision of a surgeon. Davis approached slowly, his boots crunching softly on the gravel. The swagger was gone, replaced by a deep, painful humility. He stopped a few feet away, waiting to be acknowledged. When she didn't look up, he spoke, his voice quiet, stripped of all its former arrogance. "Master Sergeant," he began, the words catching in his throat. "I came to apologize. My conduct on the range today was inexcusable. It was unprofessional, and it was disrespectful. I had no right. I was wrong." Sharma continued to wipe carbon from the bolt face, her silence stretching for an uncomfortably long time. Davis stood there, willing to endure the quiet judgment he so richly deserved. Finally, she paused her work. She looked up at him, her dark eyes not filled with anger or triumph, but with a calm, analytical clarity. She gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. "Apology accepted, Captain." She then picked up the firing pin, holding it to the light. Assumptions are the first mistake in any engagement. They are a liability you can't afford. It wasn't a rebuke. It was a lesson, delivered with the dispassionate finality of a field manual. The quiet statement of fact struck him with more force than any reprimand from the colonel ever could. He simply nodded, uttered a quiet, "Thank you, Master Sergeant," and walked away a changed man. A year passed. The All-Army Marksmanship Championship returned to Fort Bragg, but the atmosphere had changed. The firing point at the 1,200-meter line, once just a concrete slab, was now known to everyone as Sharma's Perch. Shooters, new and old, approached it with a palpable sense of reverence, their usual loud boasts and jokes softening into quiet focus. The legend of the impossible shot had become institutional memory, a core part of the base's modern folklore. Captain Davis, now promoted to major, stood near the observation tower, briefing a group of newly commissioned lieutenants. He was a different officer now, quieter, more observant, his words carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom. He pointed towards the perch. "That spot right there," he told them, "is where you learn the most important lesson this uniform can teach you. That competence doesn't need to announce itself. That the most dangerous person on the battlefield is often the one you overlook." He told them the story, not sparing himself, using his own arrogant folly as the central teaching point. Master Sergeant Sharma was not there. Her name was no longer on the base roster. Like a ghost, she had moved on to another classified assignment in another part of the world. But her presence was more potent in her absence. Tacked to the wall inside the range control office was a single, high-resolution photograph of the M24, serial number 762-002. Its worn stock and Raven symbol a silent, constant reminder that true professionalism is a matter of character, not credentials. The legacy of that single day was not about one perfect shot, but about the enduring principle it revealed. It was a powerful, kinetic lesson in the difference between noise and signal. Loud arrogance, cynical assumptions, and superficial judgments are merely noise, a distracting static that fills the air but signifies nothing. Quiet competence, disciplined action, and proven skill are the signal. A clear, pure tone that cuts through the chaos and communicates undeniable truth. Master Sergeant Sharma's actions created a legacy far more lasting than a trophy or a medal. She reminded an entire generation of soldiers that true strength is found not in the volume of one's voice, but in the steadiness of one's hands. She proved that authority is not derived from the rank on your collar, but from the respect you command through your demonstrated abilities. Her silence was not a weakness to be exploited, but a fortress of professional integrity. The story of her shot became a parable, passed down from senior NCOs to new privates, a lesson in humility, respect, and the quiet, unassailable power of being the deadliest person in the valley and not needing to say a single word about it. For more stories where quiet competence triumphs over loud assumption and where silent professionalism defines true worth, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Tales.